Number one, Goku's bounce in the intro, like when he steals the spotlight and getting in front of people, that's reminiscent of the old Dragon Ball intros from Dragon Ball Z, GT, even Super. Every single one of them, Goku bounces in front of everyone because he's the star of the show for Dragon Ball, right? Now, the next few are just going to be from the Majin Buu arc, like these Easter eggs. It's just, I want to point out a lot of what Goma and Degesu are watching. So there's a whole bunch. I'm gonna just go over the main points that they got. First was the introduction of Babidi and Dabura, aka Dabura. But I'll get to Dabura later on, or Dabra, because there's a very important character. Actually, you know what? Let me get into it right now. They mentioned that Dabra, which is how his name is supposed to be pronounced, because it's a pun on something that I'm gonna get to in a second. Just hold on. His father's name is Abura. That's how they pronounced it. So when you combine the names of Abura and Dabura, you get Abra Kadabra. That's what it's based on. That's what Dabura, it's Dabra. That's what his name is based on. Same thing with Babidi, Bibbidi, and Boo. Bibbidi, Bobbidi, Boo, right? So that's another one. So that's like 2 for the price of 1, I guess. Then you got Goku versus Majin Vegeta. What's this, like number 4, 5 that I just introduced? Degesu's older brother, he mentioned, is Kaioshin. I don't know if the translation was right, but they said that was his older brother for some weird reason. His older sister is definitely Dr. Arinsu, that's for sure. And then you got more Majin Vegeta, Buu hatching, killing Dabra, which I just covered in an episode of the rating series. You can go check that out. And it's really jarring how much more beautiful the art looks here, especially since last House ain't working on it, right? Majin Vegeta's sacrifice and the wish that the cast made to Shenlong afterward. And then, you got a few more with like Majin Buu killing Babidi. The blood splash wasn't as violent as it was from last time, but I mean, he still gushed him. Pause. Still made him bleed. Bigger pause. He still blasted him to death, and blood came out. Man. And then you got the other one of Majin Buu after he absorbed the gray skinny Buu appearing on the lookout or the palace. Gotenks versus Buu. Gohan on the Kaioshin planet. Gohan with his power unlocked versus Buu. And then you got the Genki Dama that Goku made to kill Buu, as well as the scene where they show him killing Majin Buu, which looked very awesome, looked very good. So this next section is dedicated to, I want to say GT, even though I got a little bit more. So first, Degesu makes a reference to, well, this isn't a part of the GT one. So first, Degesu makes a reference pointing out that Shenlong looks a lot like Porunga. But it's strange how he knows about Porunga and is still surprised that Shenlong can grant 3 wishes. Then, the Tamagamis protect the Dragon Balls of the Demon Realm. So they're kind of like the evil dragons from GT because, you know, they had the Dragon Balls in their heads or bodies, like placed within their bodies. So they were essentially kind of like the protectors of the Dragon Balls. In my review video, I said maybe this could be like the reason why Neba made these Dragon Balls was for them to keep, you know, the minus energy intact. But that's just a conspiracy. That's just me. That's just my thought. Maybe that's a reason. And then next, Goma decides to turn everyone into into kids. And I made a comparison in my review video that this could be like, you know, he could be like the Pilaf, like in the Pilaf role from GT. And then Mai would be Dr. Arinsu. And then Soba/Shu would be like Degesu. And then the storm-looking portal that Neba, Goma, and Degesu come out of looks like the portal that the 2 number 17s created from Dragon Ball GT. Remember the one that Piccolo and Goku had to open up as well? The passcode pin number that they had to use to leave to go into the mortal world was 0493. That is a trivia fact that could be brought up in a quiz. I like that. I like that at Trunks' party, everyone's like friends group was kind of arranged as how it was supposed to be. If you notice, if you look closely, this is the one that made me notice. It was that the Muten Roshi, also known as Master Roshi in the dub, was sitting with Gyumao or Ox King. Why is this significant? It's because the Muten Roshi trained Gyumao in the original Dragon Ball. He mentions that to Goku. Goku also mentions that science hit a growth spurt around the age of 15, which is a bit weird and unusual because Gohan, maybe he's just an oddity, hit a massive growth spurt during his training with Goku in the Room of Spirit and Time. Also, in the Trunks special that Akira Toriyama wrote, Trunks, who was around the age of 14 in that manga, had already looked way taller than this Trunks. So that's a weird one, but it's still in there. Around 22 minutes into the episode, I noticed this drawing of Goku, and I'm wondering if Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru drew it, because this drawing of Goku from Dragon Ball GT looks very, very reminiscent of the art style. The only thing throwing it off really for me are the ears, but I really wonder who did it, and I'm gonna find out who. The Kaioshin and Kibito unfuse using the bad air in Majin Buu's stomach, which is the explanation given for Vegito back in the manga that Goku gave, but Dragon Ball Super has it where an hour time limit breaks the people up, and they still, and even then, like for gods, it's permanent, and even then, they still use the dragon to unfuse them. So why would they ever need to make a wish to undo that? That's a bit shaky. Does this continuity line up with Dragon Ball Super? That's a bit weird, but okay. Goku and Vegeta's beam clash was an obvious callback to their first fight, and their sparring in general in this episode was a callback to really every fight they've had, because they showed Goku versus Majin Vegeta earlier on, so I mean, may as well. Another interesting one, the Namekians are originally from the Demon Realm. The Gesu points it out to Dende by pointing out his ears right in front of Mr. Popo, saying you have pointy ears. But it's like, Mr. Popo also has pointy ears. So does that mean Mr. Popo is from the Demon Realm as well? Okay. Neba created the Tagamis to protect his Dragon Balls, like I mentioned earlier. And lastly, this is a fun one, Shenlong, or Shenron in the dub, appears in the very first episode of Daima, which is technically the first time the dragon, Shenlong, has appeared or been summoned in the first episode of a Dragon Ball series. Because in GT, if you remember, it was the red Shenlong, or Ultimate Shenlong, who appeared in episode 1. It wasn't the green one like you saw in this episode. So this is the earliest appearance of Shenlong, or Shenron, has made in a Dragon Ball series, beating out the previous record held by himself in Dragon Ball Kai episode 8, which also beat Dragon Ball's record of episode 11. Episode 2 Easter eggs. Shenlong doesn't grant 3 wishes for non-regulars, i.e. basically the main cast. He only grants 3 wishes for what he called regulars, and it's been revealed in this episode after his statement to Goma. The episode intro and outros both played for the first time and teased that Bulma, Vegeta, and Piccolo will be playing bigger roles in the near future. Neba claimed he isn't able to do the Dragon Ball ritual twice, where he pretty much unstones them and makes them real Dragon Balls again. And he further mentions that in order to get the Dragon Balls in the Demon Realm, you must fight the Tamagamis and win. The design for Mr. Popo is very interesting. When he gets turned into a kid, he has horns and looks like an unused Toriyama sketch for Majin Buu. Obviously, horns are a sign of demonic nature in fiction and even in reality. But with all the callbacks and lore this show has been throwing ad nauseum for the last 2 episodes, I wouldn't be surprised if it was based on Toriyama's sketch. There's also another unused sketch in that right there, the other circled one, that looks a bit like Goma. Goma and Deges kidnap Dende almost like Raditz did for Gohan, and they even use him as a hostage just like Raditz, and take him into their ship just like Raditz. Goten and Trunks either have telepathy as infants or can speak to and understand each other, almost like Stewie Griffin. It's a bit different for the babies, for some weird reason. For the second episode in a row, this might become a running gag throughout the series, they joke about Kuririn or Krillin being small, and Bulma's the one who points it out, when after he goes, "Dang, got small again," and Bulma just pretty much says, "You've always been small." After Kaioshin tells Goku about the presence he felt on the temple, Goku immediately goes to check it out, but he isn't used to his new body, and he ends up crashing into a food court. And it's almost like, it's like GT when Goku had been turned into a kid and his body was all wonky. Piccolo mentions that Neba was an old Namekian who went to the Demon Realm alone to protect the Demon Realm's Dragon Balls. Kaioshin and Kibito explain teleportation to the Demon Realm will not work, which is why you need the new ship that they bring out, or that Kaioshin has Kibito bring out, which is reminiscent to the one that Bulma, Kuririn, and Gohan used to get to planet Namek. Remember, that was the one that the child of Katats came to planet Earth in. And, of course, wouldn't you guess, Bulma says it'll take her 10 days to rebuild that ship, just like Bulma said it'll take her 10 days to rebuild Kami's ship that Mr. Popo had showed her. Also, this ship is also very reminiscent to the time machine that Cell came back to the past in from Dragon Ball Z. Well, later portions of the manga in Dragon Ball and in Dragon Ball Z and in Kai. Also, the way this ship looks, it looks very similar to the way the child of Katats, well, Kami, before he became Kami, his ship looked. This is probably just the demon-esque designs. If you remember correctly, back in the Piccolo arc, Piccolo's throne, Demon King Piccolo, it looked like what you see on the screen. But that later got retconned to be Namekian architecture and designs for Namekians, right? But now it almost seems like it's always been demonic, and it's just something that the Namekians inherited from their demonic spirit. That's what I'm interpreting. It may not be factual, but that's what I'm seeing here. Kaioshin reveals that he came to the universe in that very ship. If the wish they made to turn people involved with Buu small, wouldn't that include everyone who donated their energy to the Genki Dama? Just wondering, because Vegeta asked, why aren't they small? And, you know, they just said it was because everyone else wasn't, they were the ones involved in the fight. So, just wondering. That was from episode 1, by the way. Just like in Dragon Ball GT, Bulma repairs the ship in episode 2, and Goku leaves within the same episode. And someone gets left off the flight. In GT, it was Goten. In Daima, it was Vegeta. After Bulma's comments about the spaceship looking recently beaten up, Kibito does bring up that it was because of the fight with Goku and Vegeta that they had with Majin Buu on the planet, with some awesome art by who I assume is Kubota. After 2 days pass, Goku thinks that he can fly again, but he kicks in midair and it has no effect, it has no reach, just like it did in the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai against Jackie Chun. In this episode, it is revealed that not all pointy-eared people are from the Demon Realm. So Mr. Popo could be excluded, although he does have horns on his head like I mentioned earlier. So he probably is from the Demon Realm. They also reveal that long ago, many demons sought freedom and left the Demon Realm to rule other worlds, but that all got put to a stop, and that's why you need permission to leave the Demon Realm. In order to make up for the loss of his reach, Goku goes to look for his Nyoibo from Karin and finds it in a place that he wouldn't expect. Kame Sennin was using it to hang his clothes like laundry. Piccolo claims his senses have been dulled since becoming a kid, and he wasn't even able to sense malice from Glorio. This could be setting up a heel turn from Glorio in the future. Glorio's introduction in this series makes him almost identical to Kaioshin from the Buu arc. He is sent, or he goes to Earth to seek help from Goku and the others to help him fight demons. Very reminiscent of Kaioshin, and even Trunks in the Cell arc, who goes to Earth, or basically a different world to him, to seek help to fight the artificial humans. In the end credits, there's a dragon that flies by that looks real similar to one that Toriyama drew in 1991 in the picture you see right there on the screen. Those are the Easter eggs and lore and all that good stuff for episode 2. The GT parallels continue with episode 3 of Dragon Ball Daima. Here's all the Easter eggs, lore, references, and all that jazz in this video. Number 1, Goku is shocked by how fast he, Kaioshin, and Glorio leave the Earth, and Kaioshin has to explain that the Demon Realm's planes function on magic power, which makes them fast. Kind of like the Namekian spaceship. Remember when Bulma and Popo went to Jupiter so fast? It's kind of like that. And remember, the Namekians are, have demon heritage, I guess, if you want to say that. So magic, and then the Namekians use magic as well for the Dragon Ball. So there's a correlation there as well. Kaioshin also explains that this warp character is a transit point between the demon realm and outside world. You gotta go through the warp to get to the demon realm, and it's implied there's multiple warps. A warp, by the way, if you're confused, is that fish-looking thing that got Goma and Glorio to the human realm. There is a planet, Batapi, of the Raka system. They mentioned that early on in the episode. They finally get to the warp, and Goku even mentions he looks like a giant goldfish, and he just screws around with the warp until Kaioshin has to reel him in. Kinda like Kami did when Goku first met King Yama. But also there's another thing. He mentions it looks like a goldfish. That's probably where the design came from. The warp asks to see the pointed ears on Goku, who doesn't have any. So Kaioshin uses magic to do it for Goku so they could all pass through. And surprisingly, or rather unsurprisingly, it works. It's really easy to pass through these realms for some reason. But that's a bit of a joke in itself. But it's also another thing where Kaioshin mentions that the pointy ear thing used to not even be a thing. You could just pass freely. So yeah, there's been a whole bunch of change in that time. The pin number Goku, Kaioshin, and Glorio give is different from episode 1 when Goma and Deguess left. Remember, their pin number was 0493 on the screen. Here, Glorio gave the number 8821 as the pin number. Could it be the pin number is for the first demon realm rather than the third demon realm? As in Goma used his to go to the first because, you know, he might have access to the first while Glorio only has access to the third? It is implied, so just keep that in mind. That kind of rhymed. That rhymed too. Kaioshin remembers that he needs to tell Kibito about the pin number but runs out of time as they pass into the relay point. This could suggest that telekinesis does not work from the demon, like different realms, you know? Well, obviously, right? Animation from episode 1 is reused of Goma leaving the demon realm. It's reused in this scene as the trio goes to the relay point to pass into the demon realm. Glorio explains that the first hatch of the demon realm they're going through is only accessible by palace members of the demon realm. So they use the third one instead, which just so happens to be the furthest from Goma. But tough titty, Glorio is only cleared to use the third one. At some point during Kaioshin's youth, free access to each demon world had been stripped and only accessible through light shields. So again, with these constant changes happening to the demon realm, it's a constant theme here, change. Glorio continues being untrustworthy when the trio talk about how many members of the first demon realm have access to the warps, and he has to cover himself by saying he has work in the first world, only to say the kind of work he does is this and that? They fly past the statue of Dabra in bad condition. By the way, I'm saying Dabra because abracadabra is the pun. Just to let y'all know that. His name is Deborah in the dub, but it's, based on that. Certain lands of the demon realm just float, in midair. And according to Goku, the air is stuffy and smelly. It's like the atmosphere of the demon realm is like Baltimore, like I mentioned in my last video. But it's just a harmless gas that comes from the multiple floating volcanoes that emit the gas in the demon realm. The thicker the gas, the heavier the air. Apparently, Kaioshin is a gleaned, whatever that means, and Glorio makes it very clear that those kind stay in the second demon world. They have to fly the ship slowly so that air resistance doesn't destroy the ship. That's how powerful the air is in the demon world. Or at least the third demon world. Here's just a list of Glorio's order. I thought it'd be cool to mention this. 5 hamburgers for Goku, obviously, and 2 drinks, 1 for Kaioshin and 1 for himself. Like I mentioned in my last video, it was around this point that I remember Goku didn't have pointy ears, and that could be a cause for all the shady behavior and fighting that could arise later on and even in the bar right now. And just literally seconds after I thought that, some big demon comes up and attacks Goku, but he easily puts him in his place. And on a second note, he punches the demon in the face who tells him anything goes, right? Almost like he did to Geese on Planet Namek, right? Just punched him straight in the face. It was pretty funny. And lastly, the GT parallels persist through this episode when 1, they check themselves into a hotel on an unfamiliar planet just like they did in GT in episode 3, and 2, when they wake up and leave the hotel to find that their ship has been stolen just like what happened in GT. In the same episode, no less. Episode 3 of GT, this happened. Much like with GT Episode 4, Daima Episode 4 begins with the guys lamenting the loss of the ship, then devising a strategy to get it back. In GT, Goku tried teleporting, and in Daima, Goku tries flying. Then, just like in GT, teleportation didn't work. The same applies to flying. In the thick air of the demon realm, all the energy expansion just ain't worth it. They all eventually bite the bullet and fly over the Sea of Darkness, which is dangerous according to Kaioshin. Because of Goku slaying the demon, Glorio asks how he was able to do that without seeing him beforehand, and Goku has to explain that he sensed his ki, kinda like Gohan did for Videl and Z, when he taught her how to fly, remember? They stop by a teapot-shaped place and get tea and skewered lizard, which Goku loved, but the herb juice with honey, not so much. Glorio tries to get a new plane from the woman's husband, but he wants to sell Glorio a sky seed that only travels 120 kilometers with the trio inside for 8,000 dokuro, which is basically currency, but Glorio baits the man into selling it for only 5,000. What an interesting character moment for him. Also, it's really funny that Glorio hustled the man when in GT it was Goku, Trunks, and Pan being hustled on a mecha by Donkia and, his government and stuff like that, remember? Just another element taken from GT. While messing around in the shop, Goku picks up a revive bug, which pretty much acts as a senzu. It restores your stamina. Kaioshin reacts to the bug in shock though. More on that later. They even sell different kinds of these medic bugs. The Achichi bug, the Achichi bugs, the Achichi bugs for burns, the Jutsu bugs for headaches, and the Butte bugs for silky smooth skin. It's kind of like being in a drugstore, But the one bug they fixated on the most was the join bug, a bug that temporarily fuses people when the halves are fed to two people. In the description though, they had 3 different people. I personally believe this bug can fuse more than 2 people at a time. And with this revelation of bugs, could it be that this is how Kaioshin refuses with Kibito? Probably not. But I am 108 2/3% certain that Goku, Vegeta, and even Piccolo will definitely use these bugs to fuse in the near future. Glorio buys the bug, and meanwhile Goku's mispronouncing his name Goliro while I call him Glory Hole. It's the funniest thing. This right here is the seed of a great fiend flower called the Sky Seed. Kinda reminds me of the Shinjin tree, the concept that Toriyama came with for Kaioshins and Makaioshins that grow on the Shinjin tree. 2 things. First, the way they're riding that thing looks a bit sexual and wrong. Second, this is a bit like Mercenary Tao's method of travel, breaking pillars and stuff and then launching them into the sky and riding on them. They nearly land into the Sea of Darkness in quite a thrilling scene actually, but because the seed is much like Tao's method of flight, it doesn't have an engine to sustain itself in the sky. Goku gives a pretty good idea of flying the rest of the way since they have half a day's walk, but Kaioshin and Glorio don't like the bugs. Maybe there's a side effect to eating the bugs that is far beneath the surface that they aren't showing just yet. Also, could there be a Medibug from the store that causes transformations? This is just something I thought of while watching the scene, because they got one for fusion, beauty, all this stuff, but you may as well have one for transformations, right? Even though there's already enough transformations as is, it's just a thought though. They could have one for transformations, just look out for that in the future. Again, like with episode 1, Glorio says the Demon Realm's Dragon Balls can be considered the original, basically, and how you gotta beat the Tamagamis in order to take them, which makes Goku want to gather them. Then he tells Goku he's not able to, and no one ever has, which makes Goku more amped to collect the Dragon Balls. I'm thinking he's probably gonna gather them, then the concept of evil dragons from GT might get rejiggered into something different for this series. The Tamagamis of the 3rd Demon Realm live on the opposite side of where they first landed. Goku has the idea of rescuing Dende, then using the Dragon Balls to turn them grown up again. Glorio implies that more than one wish can be made on the Dragon Balls. He mentions rescuing Dende if he were to be killed or something, and then turning them grown up as well. At one point, Goku lifts up his Nyoibo to the sky to see the next town, and that made me realize they could have just used the Nyoibo to extend to their next destination. And now that Goku has extended the Nyoibo to the sky, what's stopping them from doing that? Also, this scene looks like a drawing Toriyama did of Goku, Kuririn, and the Muten Roshi at the Tenkaichi Budokai, but only Goku in this version, for obvious reasons. After Goku drinks potentially dangerous water, the trio run into a Kempe or Gendarmerie, the Demon King's military police. And they watch from afar like Goku, Pan, and Trunks did in GT Episode 4 once again. Another thing taken from GT. Potentially. The police explains that Goma is having the demons give 3 gold coins as offerings because he's unpleased with being as lenient as he was, and also the punishment for failing to pay is forfeiting 3 years of your life. The demons they're doing this to have magic collars on them, so they're pretty much shackled, kind of like the Omegans from GT, who had all their belongings and ships taken away from them so they wouldn't leave the planet, and they were being taxed like crazy by Donkia, much like these demons. Much like in GT, they will tax these people anything, even just for fleeing. Fleeing cost them an additional 10 years of life. That wasn't that crazy. They actually demonstrate the effects of not paying by literally sucking out the life of this guy right here. Right before Goku steps in to stop this, kind of like Gohan did for Dodoria on Namek, Pansy stops it while covered up and throws a wasabi bomb at them, which absolutely fails, and Goku has to step in and totally dismantles them. And just like that, Goku becomes a fugitive at the end of the episode, just like GT Episode 4. That's the second week in a row where an episode had ended with a pretty similar ending to its GT episode counterpart. And then finally, Pansy unmasks, and now you got the original GT quartet of Goku, Giru, Pan, and Trunks, with Goku, Pansy, Kaioshin, and Glorio. Additionally, the 4th member of the quartet was added at the end of this episode, much like how Giru was added at the end of episode 3 of GT. Pansy in episode 4 of Daima, obviously. And that's all you missed from Dragon Ball Daima episode 4.